What is on tap for this episode of Couz's Corner? We are going to preview and give my score prediction for the upcoming Backyard Brawl between the West Virginia Mountaineers and the Pittsburgh Panthers. So pull up a chair, sit back, relax, and let me serve you up this shot of top shelf college football content. What is up, college sports fans, fellow members of Mountaineer Nation? This is Couz, and welcome into another edition of Couz's Corner. So pull that chair up, and let's dig into the episode. And this is a very much anticipated episode for me. I have really been looking forward to doing this, as I'm going to preview this game in detail, look at offense and defense for both teams, give you the odds, and then at the end I'll give you my score prediction. I'm also going to give you some key players to look out for each team. So let's get started. First of all, this game will be played at Acrisure Stadium in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It will be played on Thursday, September the 1st. It will kick off at 7 o'clock p.m. and will air on ESPN. College Gameday is going to be there, so that shows you how important this game is to college football fans, especially those in the Pittsburgh and West Virginia fan bases. It's been over a decade since these two heated rivals took to the gridiron to face one another. It's a rivalry that goes back. This will be the 105th edition of the game. It's very important for both of these programs, both of these teams, and especially both of these fan bases because we are all excited about this game. We've been talking smack to one another on Twitter. It's been really fun, and I cannot wait. As I record this video on Thursday, August the 25th, it's exactly 1 week to kick off with this much anticipated game between these two teams. And, of course, it's a sold-out game, so it should be a great environment for college football. The odds of the game, Pitt, according to the ESPN matchup predictor, Pitt has a 78.1% chance of winning the game. West Virginia only a 21.9% chance. According to Vegas, Pitt is favored. Pitt is at -7 in the game. The over/under is 51. Now let's look at some key team stats here. First, let's start with West Virginia. Offensively, West Virginia in 2021 was 87th in the country in total offense at 371.3 yards a game. Scoring, they were 88th in the country, averaging 25.2 points a game. Passing offense, they were 56th in the country at 247.9 yards per game, and rushing 103rd at 123.4 yards per game. Now, one thing about these offensive stats, and this goes for both teams, you've got to take these with a grain of salt because, number one, both teams will have a different quarterback, as West Virginia's bringing in JT Daniels and Pitt's bringing in Kedon Slovis, and both teams have different offensive coordinators. West Virginia brought in Graham Harrell in the offseason. Pittsburgh replaced Mark Whipple with Frank Cignetti Jr., who's probably going to run a different style of offense. So that could play a role here. So you've got to take these offensive stats with a grain of salt. Some other key offensive stats for West Virginia. They were 39.8% on third downs last year, which was 68th in the country. The red zone offense was tied for 18th nationally, so they actually did pretty well once they got into the red zone. That's going to football. Sacks allowed. They were tied for 111th nationally, giving up 2.92 sacks per game. This is an area they have to improve in. Now, some of that could be attributed to the offensive line. However, a lot of it can also be attributed to Jarret Doege, last year's quarterback, holding onto the ball way too long, and some struggles in pass blocking by the running backs and the tight ends. I expect all of that to improve this year. Now let's look at the defensive side of the ball for the Mountaineers. Total defense, 37th in the country, 351 yards per game given up. Scoring defense, they were 45th, giving up 23.85 points a game. Passing defense, they were 40th, giving up 211.5 yards a game. And rushing defense, they were 43rd, giving up 138.5 yards a game on the ground. Now, West Virginia does have continuity on the defensive side as far as coaching staff goes, same as Pitt. So there's a lot of similarities in this game. Both teams bringing in new quarterbacks. Both teams bringing in new offensive coordinators. Both teams bringing back a lot of returning faces up front on both sides of the ball. Both teams have similar weaknesses, which I'll touch on later. A lot of similarities between these teams, in my opinion. Jordan Leslie, the defensive coordinator at West Virginia, has done a great job all three years he's been a defensive coordinator. These defenses have performed solidly. Now, in all fairness to our defense, I think they're better than their stats show because our offense put them in very bad positions last year at many times. And West Virginia was one of the worst teams in the nation as far as special teams and field position went. So our defense was continuously being put in bad situations. I expect that to improve this year. So hopefully our defensive stats will improve in the 2022 season. Now let's look at Pittsburgh. Offensively, the Pitt Panthers in 2021, they were 8th in the country in total offense, 486.6 yards a game. Scoring, third in the country, averaging 41.4 points a game. Passing, they were eighth in the country, 337.4 yards a game. Rushing, not quite as good, 77th in the country, 149.2 yards a game. However, it's been said, even by head coach Pat Narduzzi, that Pitt did not run the ball a lot last year. They were a pass-first team under offensive coordinator Mark Whipple. That's one of the reasons Narduzzi wanted to get rid of him. He wanted to run the ball more. Not sure why you want to get rid of an offensive coordinator that had you at eighth in the country, but I digress. You also have to give some credit to last year, the fact that Pitt had two superstar players on the offensive side of the ball. Quarterback Kenny Pickett, who's now at the Pittsburgh Steelers, was a high draft pick. And then Jordan Addison, who was the Blitnikoff Award winner at wide receiver, who's now playing for the USC Trojans over on the West Coast. Both of those guys are gone now. How much will that impact this offense? We will see. Some other key offensive stats for Pitt. They were 44% on third downs last year, which was 29th in the country. Red zone offense, they were 28th in the country. And in sacks allowed, Pitt did struggle somewhat in this area as well. They were 87th in the country, giving up 2.43 sacks per game. So as much as Pitt fans want to talk about how they have all five offensive linemen returning, just like West Virginia does, Pitt also gave up quite a few sacks. I watched some film on Pitt, and they seem to give up most of their sacks at the tackle spots. Can they shore up those two tackle spots this year in Frank Cignetti's offense? We will see. Now, defensively for Pitt, last season, they were 39th in the country at giving up 353.6 yards a game. Scoring defense, they were 42nd in the country, giving up 23.64 points a game. Passing defense, 115th in the country, one of the worst in the nation, giving up 264.3 yards per game passing. Now, if there's one area where Pitt is weak, it's this, the defensive secondary. Ironically, there's also a lot of question marks for West Virginia in the defensive secondary because we are bringing in a lot of new faces, a lot of transfers coming in that have not played at this level or with this group. So will West Virginia's defensive secondary have the continuity that Pitt's does? We will see. And then rushing defense, this where Pitt actually excelled. They were sixth in the country, giving up only 89.3 yards a game on the ground. So they were very stout up front, very, very good defensive front. They were decent at the linebacker spot a year ago. There's going to be some question marks there this year, but they are expected to be pretty good there as well. But this defensive front for Pitt has some studs. They have at least two guys who will probably be playing on Sundays. Can West Virginia's young yet experienced offensive line hold up against their strong Pittsburgh defensive front? We will see. Now let's touch on special teams for a minute because I think this game is going to be extremely close, and I think it's going to come down potentially to special teams play and coaching. I think the coaching in this game is going to be critical. Which staff can exploit the weaknesses on the other side? Neal Brown's been using a little bit different strategy than Pat Narduzzi when it comes up to game planning and strategy and all that. He's been doing all their scrimmages on Thursday, trying to get these guys into a routine where they're used to playing on a Thursday. Whereas Pat Narduzzi, I think, correct me, Pitt fans, if I'm wrong, but Pat Narduzzi has been doing their scrimmages on Saturdays, treating it like a Saturday game somewhat. And will that matter at the end of the day? I don't know. And also, which coach will be able to make adjustments in game because being the first game of the season, there's going to be some rust. There's going to be mistakes made. Which coaching staff will be able to adjust on the fly the best? That could be the difference in this football game. But now let's touch on special teams for a minute. West Virginia, touchback percentage was a very weak area for them last year. They only had touchbacks on 18% of their kickoffs. Very, very low number. One of the worst in the country. However, they went out into the transfer portal and brought in a kickoff specialist in Parker Grotehouse from Florida State. His touchback percentage a year ago at Florida State was 46%, so much higher. So I expect the kickoffs to go into the end zone this year much more frequently than they did a year ago, which should improve West Virginia's starting field position on defense. Pitt on special teams. They had 2 kicks and a punt blocked in 2021. Don't sound like a lot. However, West Virginia brought in a transfer in the offseason that didn't get talked about a whole lot. His name is Anthony Del Negro. He's a transfer from Stony Brook, but he's a senior transfer, grad transfer, I think. In his career at Stony Brook, he blocked 2 kicks and 3 punts in his career. That's almost unheard of, folks. So he blocked 5 total kicks in his career, playing only 3 seasons at Stony Brook because he redshirted a year. And in 1 year, actually 2 seasons because he redshirted a year, and then 1 year he didn't play. So in 2 seasons at Stony Brook of actually playing, he blocked 3 punts and 2 kicks. West Virginia now has him on the roster. Can they take advantage of his seemingly expertise at blocking kicks? And is Pitt susceptible to giving up some of those? We will see. That could potentially make a difference in the game. Now, let's look at some key players to watch in this game. First off, for West Virginia, the visiting team. Now, first, let me just tell you, yes, I'm a West Virginia fan. You see the West Virginia stuff in my background. Most of you know me already. I'm trying to be as objective as I can during this video, okay? And it's not easy, but I'm trying really hard to be objective, okay? So keep that in mind. Players to watch for West Virginia. Offensively, all 5 offensive linemen returning. They had their struggles last year at times, but they should gel better together this year because last year they were all playing together for the first time. Had some newcomers up front as well, some transfers, some freshmen and whatnot. West Virginia's still fairly young up front. It's not like they're filled with fifth-year seniors. They have a sophomore, a junior, a couple redshirt juniors, I think. So they're not that old up front, but they are more experienced, so they should be much better this year. Then also you've got quarterback JT Daniels. JT Daniels, well known, has struggled with injury both at USC and at Georgia. He lost the starting jobs there at both places over season-ending injuries or at least serious injuries. In his career, though, here are his numbers. They're pretty solid. He's 389 of 610 passing, which is 63.8% completion percentage, 4,840 yards, 32 touchdowns, only 16 interceptions. He has a QB rating in his career of 142.5. That's at USC and at Georgia. Neal Brown has not officially named him the starting quarterback yet, so it's possible, at least as of the recording of this video, he had not. So it's possible he may not be the starter. I expect him to be. Everybody expects him to be. I'm sure Pitt expects him to be. But as of now, it's not been made official. Running back Tony Mathis Jr., this will be his first year as the true starter for the Mountaineers. He's been a backup to Letty Brown his whole career. Last season, he had 72 carries for 312 yards, a 4.1 average. But they said he's looked great in camp. He's expected to step up and be very successful this year and to be a great running back for the Mountaineers. His backup will be Justin Johnson Jr., who has also looked impressive in camp according to the coaching staff. The key wide receivers, number one, and we got 2 seniors here, Bryce Ford Wheaton. Last season for the Mountaineers, he caught 42 balls for 575 yards and 3 touchdowns, an average of 13.7 yards per catch. Sam James, another senior, also caught 42 balls last year for 505 yards and 5 touchdowns, a 12-yard per catch average. James will be likely playing in the slot. Bryce Ford Wheaton will likely be playing on the outside. Now, the thing with Sam James, his best season was actually his redshirt freshman year. Neal Brown's first year in the program in 2019, Sam James had 69 catches, 677 yards, and 2 touchdowns, average of 9.8 yards per catch. However, he struggled with drops that year. Had he not struggled with drops so bad, he likely would have hit 1,000 yards receiving that year. He dropped a lot of passes. He came back his sophomore year, still struggled with dropping passes. But since then, he's made a lot of improvement. Came in last year, was a lot better at securing the football, a lot more consistent in catching the ball, and had a really good, solid year. Now, one player I want to touch on, Mike O'Laughlin, our starting tight end from last year, the one who's good in the pass game, set out about half of last season with a season-ending injury. He will be back for the Pitt game. However, he's not practiced much. I think he's only going to have about 2 weeks of fall camp under his belt before the game. He was out for the spring and out for most of summer OTAs. However, the guy's got a lot of experience, so I expect him to be okay. Might get a little fatigued, but West Virginia brought in a good, solid replacement for him in senior transfer Brian Palende from Colorado State. Now, he's more of a run-blocking tight end. And one of the reasons I think he's key here is because West Virginia's weak spot on the offensive line is expected to be at the right tackle spot, where there's a battle going on between last year's starter at left tackle, Brandon Yates, and Jaquay Hubbard. That could be a weakness on our offensive line. So with Brian Palende in the fold and his ability to help block, he can step up and help add some additional protection up front to that right side of the line if it does become an issue. So I like the addition of Palende. It looks like in the offseason, what I like about this Mountaineer staff, they went out and addressed the weaknesses on the team, and I think Palende feels that need. Defensively for the Mountaineers, you've got defensive tackle Dante Steele, All-American candidate. He's up for all kinds of different preseason watch lists. Last season, he had 36 total tackles, 15 tackles for loss, 7 sacks, and even had an interception. Now listen to his career numbers at West Virginia. He has 19 sacks in his career, which is tied for 6th all-time in the program. He's tied for 3rd all-time in sack yards with 141, but only needs 15 yards to break the record set by Bruce Irvin. So he'll probably be the all-time sack yards leader by the time he leaves West Virginia. He has 44 career tackles for loss, which is 3rd all-time, and only needs 6 to break the record set by Julian Miller. So he'll likely break that record as well. And then he's already the all-time leader at West Virginia in tackles for lost yards with 205. So Dante Stills will probably leave West Virginia with several different records. He's the leader up front. He's a leader of that defense, and I expect him to have a very solid year. And he put up those numbers from last year, and the coaching staff and even himself said he didn't play consistently last year. He had plays where he didn't get, where he wasn't able to perform up to his standards, and he's ready to do that this year. So I think he's going to have an even better year in 2022. Another key defensive lineman to look out for, Jordan Jefferson. The reason he's key, we lost Akeem Mesidor, another potential All-American up front, to the transfer portal. He's now at Miami. Jordan Jefferson is his replacement. Now, Jordan Jefferson is a different style of player than Mesidor. Mesidor was more of an athletic, quick twitch guy off the line, whereas Jordan Jefferson's a bigger body, will take up more space. But I do think he'll be effective up there, and will give our linebackers – he will take up blockers and will give our linebackers opportunities to get into the backfield, hopefully. A couple linebackers, Lance Dixon, who started part of the season last year, filling in for the injured X. Lowe. He was a 5-star recruit coming into Penn State out of high school. In his first season at West Virginia, he played in 9 games, had 36 total tackles and a tackle for loss. But they say he's had a great camp. He's very athletic, and he could be crucial in this season for the Mountaineers. Then you've got another newcomer in the middle, Lee Koba, who's replacing Josh Chandler-Samito at that Mike linebacker spot. He started his career off at Syracuse, transferred down to JUCO, had a great career at JUCO. Now he's back at the Power 5 level and very hungry to show the nation what he can do at that middle linebacker spot. And then last but not least, on defense for the Mountaineers, we've got Charles Woods. Charles Woods, according to Pro Football Focus, was the highest graded cover corner in the Big 12 last season. In 10 games, he had 29 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 2 interceptions, 4 passes defended, and 2 fumble recoveries. They said Charles Woods has had a great camp, great offseason. He's expected to come in and be a lockdown corner for the Mountaineers in 2022. Now let's switch gears to the Pittsburgh Panthers. A lot of talent on this team, guys. A lot of talent. This team scares me. I'm not going to lie to you. They also have all 5 of their offensive linemen returning from a pretty solid offensive line unit last year. They also struggle. They did have their weaknesses as well. Gave up quite a few sacks. They have had another year to gel together, just like the Mountaineers. Quarterback Kedon Slovis, the transfer from USC. Most of you already know this storyline, but Kedon Slovis was actually the person who replaced JT Daniels when JT Daniels got hurt at USC his sophomore year. Kedon Slovis came in that year as a freshman, played lights out. It ended up securing the starting job, I guess, for the rest of the season while Daniels was injured. Daniels decided to transfer out after the season and go play for Georgia. Now, another ironic storyline, West Virginia's offensive coordinator, Graham Harrell, was the coach of both of these young men at USC that year and actually went on to coach Kedon Slovis for 2 more years. So Graham Harrell was Kedon Slovis' offensive coordinator for 3 seasons at USC. So he should know his tendencies. He should know his weaknesses. And I'm sure he's given that information to West Virginia's defensive staff. But Slovis' career stats at USC, 3 seasons, he's 652 for 953 passing, which is 68.4% completion percentage, 7,576 yards, 58 touchdowns, only 24 picks, a QB rating of 150.2. So 2 quarterbacks with star power, star potential, and the ability to put up big numbers. Should be an exciting game, assuming both of them start. Pat Narduzzi has already announced Kedon Slovis a starter for Pitt. It's yet to be determined when Brown will announce Daniels, or if he will announce Daniels as a starter for West Virginia. Running backs for Pitt. Interesting story here. They actually had 3 backs last year that carried the rock quite a bit. None of them exceeded 1,000 yards, but they all had success. Israel Abanikanda carried the ball 123 times for 651 yards, 7 touchdowns, 5.3 average. Vincent Davis, 142 carries, 593 yards, 4 touchdowns, 4.2 average. Rodney Hammond Jr., 102 carries, 5 touchdowns, 504 yards, 4.9 average. All 3 of those guys will be back for the Pitt Panthers. Coach Pat Narduzzi said he expects to have a 1,000-yard rusher on the team this year. Which one of these guys will it be? My money is going on Israel Abanikanda, but it's yet to be determined. But Pitt is deep at that spot, has a lot of talent at that spot, and should be able to run the ball with somewhat success this season. Can they do it against the Mountaineers, who do have a pretty solid run defense up front? We will see. But I like that three-headed monster for the Panthers. Wide receiver position, you've got, obviously they lost Jordan Addison to USC, like I mentioned earlier, but they still have Jarret Doege returning, who caught the ball 47 times last season for 658 yards and 6 touchdowns. You've got Kanate Muntfield, a transfer from Akron, who had 63 catches for 751 yards, 8 touchdowns. So he's expected to contribute too. Not sure who the better receiver is there, whether it be Muntfield or Wayne, but whichever one West Virginia sees as the most dangerous, they will probably put Charles Woods on him to try to shut him down. And if I'm the Mountaineers, and if I'm Mountaineer fans, which I am, this is the guy that scares me the most. It's Gavin Bartholomew, sophomore tight end for the Pitt Panthers, 6'5", 255 pounds, caught 28 balls last year for 326 yards and 4 touchdowns. That guy makes me nervous. Can West Virginia's linebackers and safeties cover this guy? I hope so, because a tight end with this kind of talent, this kind of ability, can really cause problems for a defense. And I hope West Virginia's defense is up to the task. We will see. I think West Virginia's defense is more athletic this year, so I feel more confident that they can cover him this year than they would have been able to last year had we played them. But still, nonetheless, it will not be an easy task. Defensively for the Pitt Panthers, they return all starters on the defensive front. A defensive front that had a lot of success last year, and like I said earlier, will probably have 2 guys getting drafted into the NFL. Leader up front, Habakkuk Baldonado, had 41 total tackles, 12 tackles for losses, 9 sacks, 1 forced fumble, and 1 fumble recovery in 2021. They also have defensive lineman Kalaji Cansey up front, 33 total tackles, 13 tackles for loss, 7 sacks, 1 forced fumble in 2021. These guys will get after the quarterback. Absolutely will get after the quarterback. Absolutely will wreak havoc in the backfield. And one thing about this Pitt defense, they love to blitz on third down. They will try to disguise blitzes, bring different kinds of blitzes. So West Virginia is going to have to be ready to use their running backs or tight ends to help protect JT Daniels or whoever the quarterback ends up being. Another key in the Pitt defense is defensive back Eric Hallett, who returns from last season's team. He had 68 total tackles last year, 2 forced fumbles, a fumble recovery, and 3 interceptions. Also had 8 passes defended. He's probably going to be the leader of a defensive secondary that had some struggles last year. They are prone to give up the deep ball, and with the air raid system that Graham Harrell runs, he does love to throw that deep ball. Pitt loves to play man coverage. Can West Virginia exploit that with Bryce Ford Wheaton, Sam James, Caden Prather, and the other receivers that will be taking the field for Mountaineers? We will see. The one thing I will say about the defensive secondary for the Panthers is they were all together last year, whereas West Virginia's bringing in a lot of grad transfers that have only been on the team a few months. Will the Mountaineer secondary have the same amount of chemistry? It is yet to be determined. I don't think experience is an issue for the Mountaineers, but it's experience as a Mountaineer and playing with these same guys that they played with last year. Pitt does have a slight advantage in that department. Now, one area that West Virginia really struggled in last year also was turnovers. They were -6 in turnover margin last year. They turned it over too much. A lot of that was interceptions thrown by Jarret Doege. A lot of them, not all of them weren't his fault. Some of them were. And then West Virginia's defense was not able to get a lot of turnovers last year. That's one area they struggled in. Pitt's the opposite. They were +8 in turnover margin a year ago. Kenny Pickett done a pretty decent job of securing the football on offense. They didn't fumble the ball away a whole lot, and their defense was able to get turnovers. So Pitt +8, West Virginia -6 in turnovers. West Virginia's got to correct that if they have a chance to win this game. Now for my score prediction, the moment you've probably been waiting for. This game, I think, will be extremely, extremely close. Both teams, like I said, have question marks in the defensive secondary. Both teams return depth at both lines of scrimmage. Both teams have new QBs and a new OC. The difference to me is this. One team has more experience playing together than the other team, and one team is at home. And because it's the same team who shares both of these advantages, I'm going to pick, unfortunately, I hate to do this. I'm picking with my head and not my heart, but I've got to pick the Pitt Panthers to win this game. I'm sorry, Mountaineer Nation. If I've let you down by not picking my team, but I'm trying to be objective here. I think it's going to be a really, really good game. I don't think the talent advantage for Pitt is as much as a lot of their fans think it is, but I do like the fact that they have a lot more chemistry back. They've got a lot of guys back from last year's team, and the fact that it's a home game, I think, gives them an advantage. So I think the Pitt Panthers win this game by 3 points, 32-29. So I don't think they cover the 7 points, but I do think they hit the over. I think it's a 32-29 score. I think both defenses will play solid, but I think both offenses will have good games. I think it could come down to kicking. Both teams have solid kickers. Like I said earlier, I think special teams and coaching will play a big role here, but I think at the end of the day, it comes down to the team that has the most experience returning and the team that's at home. I think home field advantage will, even though I do know there will be a lot of Mountaineer fans at the game, it's not their stadium. There is still a such thing as home field advantage. Pitt will have it, and I think they win by 3 points. I hope I'm wrong. I hope this pick is totally wrong, and I hope West Virginia wins the game. But I'm looking forward to watching it. It's going to be an exciting game. I hate that I can't make it to the game, but I will be hopefully doing some live streams or something to bring that to you guys. Now, if you want to bet on this game, look, I'm not a bookie. I'm not an expert on betting, but if you do want to bet this game, I ask that you please use the link in my description box to go to the BetUS website. And if you place your bets after using that link, I'll make a small commission from it. And if it's your first time placing a bet at BetUS, use promo code JOIN125. You'll get a 125% bonus on your very first bet with BetUS.com. If you don't want to bet, but you just want to go play some online blackjack or whatever, you can do that as well by using that link, and I'll still make a small commission. But make sure, if you do either one, that you please play responsibly. You can also check out my merch store. You can also donate by hitting the heart thanks button right below the video. If you're watching on YouTube, you want to become a channel member, hit that join button right below the video. Spotify or Apple or any other podcast platform, please subscribe and follow my podcast. I try to put out at least one audio podcast a week. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button. Please share the video out with your friends. Please leave a comment below. Let me know what your score prediction is for this game. Please hit that like button. That's very important. So please like, share, comment, subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. All that helps out my channel, will help me grow. I really appreciate you watching this episode. And until the next time, Q Country Roads.